And welcome to this month's edition of Mandurah Local Lounge. And we've got a special guest who was back in February and March, I believe, and it's Lani Reynolds from Finnicare. And he's agreed to come onto our show for a casual chat this evening. And Lani, thank you very much for coming onto the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and it has been a few months since we passed. I mean, last month we did have the pajama party, so there was no host. No one can really put their hand up to volunteer onto this podcast this month. So, no, thank you and kudos to you for putting your hand up to the couch this afternoon, this evening, rather. It's
No
rather
worries.
chilly, chilly Perth evening.
It
And
is.
yeah, and since the month since you've been on, how did you find the startup huddle experience?
Really great. But before I start, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I live and work on, which is the Binjara people of the Noongar Nation. I just want to acknowledge their connection to land, culture, and family, and I pay respect to their elders, past and present. So yeah, it was a couple of months ago since I was a presenter at the Startup Huddle. I believe that I was the second lot of presenters that they had. So it was quite nerve-wracking doing that, getting up and speaking in front of people. I've never had to get up and speak in front of people in
Yeah.
any of my previous roles. So I did find that the public speaking was a little bit nerve-wracking, but by the time I got there and got set up and had my slideshow, and the people in the room were really welcoming and friendly.
Yeah.
So I just sort of settled into it and got through the presentation quite quickly, and it was a really good experience.
Yeah. And obviously, how did you find the community? Obviously, they've been quite supportive. How did you find them ever since you've presented?
The Startup Mandurah community has been really great for networking and building local community connections. I'm starting to see some of the people that I met at the Huddle popping up in other networking events, so that's been
Yep.
really great to see people out and about in the community. I feel like the sense of community around small business is starting to feel a lot more tangible. There's a lot more sort of support out there, and people are really getting together and trying to build connections, which is really great. And the Startup Huddle Manager has been really good in bringing together like-minded people and getting us all in a room on a Monday night.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think this is what people don't realise about Mandurah is that just under the surface, a thriving startup community. Maybe it's more, I dare say it's probably more cottage industries and more business run out from home. But there is lots of people doing some amazing enterprises out there.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a lot of people out there giving business a go, and a lot of businesses that have been long-standing in the community that have really sort of pushed through all the tough times that we've been having. So it's been really great to see people getting out there and supporting local business.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, it's all about you tonight on the couch.
It is.
And
That's great.
one question I like to ask all my guests is, what's your business superpower?
So I really love learning. I'm relatively new to my role. So recently I had the opportunity to attend an intensive two-day training course at the Western Australian Association for Mental Health on being trauma responsive. And now I like to think of myself as a trauma-informed practitioner.
Wow.
So yeah, it was really interesting. It was a great 2 days with an amazing bunch of people. And being trauma informed means that the culture, work practice, and settings reflects a trauma informed approach. And staff understand that trauma and its effects and survival adaptations of our clients. And I felt like this is really important for me to learn because there's a high prevalence of people who have had trauma experiences or are living with ongoing trauma. And according to Phoenix Australia, 75% of Australians are or have been exposed to at least one traumatic event in their lifetime. And that number is much higher for those in Aboriginal communities. So it
Yeah.
was a wonderful experience, 2 days with amazing professionals, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah. And what sort of, I mean, just slightly off topic, what sort of traumatic events is quite prevalent out there in the community?
So lots of things that I potentially see in my sort of day-to-day work could be things like alcohol abuse or drug abuse or loss of income. There's other types of trauma that we all sort of know, family domestic violence, sexual trauma, things like that. But 75% of Australians being exposed to at least one traumatic event in their lifetime is absolutely huge. So that number is just incredible. So the more that we can do to become trauma-informed practitioners and be able to be responsive and sensitive to that trauma is, I think it's really important to be exposed to that.
Yep. And for those who don't know and who weren't there on the night, sorry, what can you explain the services that Finnicare can offer?
Finnicare, so it's a bit of a different sort of name.
Yeah.
So Finnicare Financial Counselling is a community service organisation. They've been in operation since 2005. We offer financial services to the community. We have offices based in Mandurah and Byford.
Wow.
Our core services include financial counselling, but we also do outreach support, community education programs, and financial crisis advocacy and negotiation. So the mission, Finnicare mission, is to provide the community with free and independent information, education, tools and assistance to enable financial independence. The vision is a financially literate, independent and empowered community, and the values are equality, respect, integrity and empowerment. So Finnicare does have lots of support. We're supported by the Government of Western Australia, the Alcoa Foundation, Anglicare WA, Lottery West and the City of Mandurah.
Okay, wow, they've got some quite local variety of stakeholders there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're really, really lucky. So the services that we offer and how the counsellors assist clients is that they can understand which debts they face are priorities. They can understand the factors affecting their situation, such as health, abuse, stability of employment, relationship status and housing. They can develop a money plan and look at ways to increase income. They can advocate, negotiate to reduce, defer, and in some circumstances waive payments with creditors and access dispute resolution schemes if they're in a dispute, and they can refer also for legal advice or to other community support services, which is really important, which is a really important part of our role, that we put people in touch with other community support services that they might need and are able to utilise.
And how long you've been running? Mind me asking.
So 2005, and it is, yes, we've got 2 offices, one in Byford and one in Mandurah. So we've got 5 financial counsellors with us in Mandurah and 2 over at our Byford branch.
And for those who don't know, and maybe someone who's listening tonight is in a bit of trouble, how did financial counselling start? Can you just give us a quick history lesson on about the service?
Yeah, absolutely. So financial counselling as a profession is more than 40 years old, and it was a community-led response to growing personal debt and unfair practices affecting families. So the profession has grown and developed, responding to social and political change, and that's been driven by some really amazing individuals in our sector. But at its heart, it's always been about helping people with their financial struggles. In the early days, community workers focused on budgeting and debt repayment as a response to consumer indebtedness. Over time, the role that unfair and inadequate incomes play in creating disadvantage became really clear, and specialist workers, the very first financial counsellors, emerged and changed the way they engage with their clients. So the pioneers of this service model started to see common threads in their work, and financial counsellors built networks and shared experiences so they could better help families that came to them for support and increase advocacy opportunities. The need for advocacy has grown over the last 40 years, which led to the National Debt Helpline and website. So the National Debt Helpline is a telephone service. It was launched in 2016, and they're both vital to improving access to financial counselling services Australia-wide.
Fantastic. And what are some of the myths about financial counselling that you like to dispel right
Sure.
now?
So a lot of clients that we speak to, or when they initially make an appointment, they assume that they can only receive support if they're receiving some sort of Centrelink payment or pension payment or have a healthcare card. While we do offer support to those clients, our primary focus is always to support anyone that's experiencing financial hardship. So that includes members on the community that have larger incomes, or it could also include someone that's receiving government assistance. Something else that we hear a lot is that there is a cost involved. So financial counsellors are government funded, and as a result, we'll never charge for our support or services, and clients can access as many appointments as they need to without being charged a fee, which is really
Yeah.
great.
That's great. Yeah.
We also hear that we also sometimes hear that we are counsellors, and I think the name really has something to do with that. So in New Zealand, they're actually called financial mentors, which I kind of prefer that terminology because we're not trained therapeutic counsellors. And while we understand there can be a level of trauma that has contributed to the financial stress, we will always focus on improving the financial situation of the client, and we would then refer out to other professionals. And the last one that we sort of get is that we do find that it can take people a little while to get over the feeling that maybe they'll be judged in their
Okay.
appointments for maybe their spending behaviour or what they do. But we treat everyone in a way that allows them to feel safe. We are trusted professionals. We collaborate with local services, and we're really transparent about our abilities and what we can do, and what assistance that we can offer.
Yeah, well, it's all about the trust and at the end of the day. And
Yeah, you've
Yeah.
got to build that trust and build that rapport, and I think the transparency around really talking about what we're able to do and what we're not able to do really goes a long way to building that trust.
And what does a day in the life of a financial counsellor look like?
So at the moment for me, there's sort of three parts to what I'm currently doing. So client appointments are what I find the most rewarding in my position. We can take up to 3 appointments a day at Finnicare, and we have the ability to see vulnerable clients really quickly. So we're able to book them in and see them in a really quick turnaround time. So it's good to know that when someone comes in, they're obviously in financial hardship or stress, and we're able to book them in sort of straight away and see them relatively quickly. I'm also studying the Diploma of Financial Counselling, which has been a really great way to put together my previous knowledge in banking and finance and learn how to utilise that in a different setting, which has been really rewarding. And the third aspect of what I'm currently doing is community engagement, which is really important as small business financial counselling is not widely known in the community. And I really want those who need the service to have access to it while we are funded for it.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting that I suppose that you all would have to come from some sort of banking and finance background to get into this sort of role, but it's just interesting you made that transition over. It seems like you're doing from the other side of the fence, so
Yeah.
to speak. Yeah.
It does play a part, especially a lot of what we do is statements of financial position, so reviewing income, expenses, assets and liabilities, and if I'm very experienced in statements of financial positions because I've done them a lot before, so that has played a really good part in terms of what I do now. So the crossover's been really good.
Absolutely. Now, the last 18 months is probably arguably some of the toughest years for small business, arguably since the Great Depression, really. And
Absolutely.
can you share some insights on the front line from Finnicare's point of view?
So Finnicare was really, really lucky. They received funding from the Department of Communities to be able to provide small business financial counselling as part of the state government's WA recovery plan to help small businesses impacted by COVID-19 for the first time ever. So we've never had small business financial counsellors in the state before. So in my WA team, there are 3 small business financial counsellors. We have got Steve McLaren from Anglicare in Joondalup, who comes with an extensive career and knowledge in banking and finance. We also have the absolutely wonderful Colleen Crowley from the City of Coburn, who has been a highly regarded financial counsellor in our sector for over 15 years. And myself, down here looking after the Peel region in Finnicare Financial Counselling, based here in Mandurah.
Yeah.
So we're really lucky to have had that funding and to be able to offer this service to clients in the community. So what we can do and how we can help is we can negotiate with creditors such as banks or finance companies if small businesses are behind on payments or need extra time to pay things. We can advocate and negotiate to reduce, defer, and in some circumstances waive payments with creditors such as the ATO or Centrelink. We can access dispute resolution services such as AFCA, which is the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, to make complaints, or the Small Business Development Corporation. They assist with commercial tenancy disputes. We can provide information about the insolvency process for companies. We can assist with understanding and organising business and financial records. We can understand the points where business and personal assets and liabilities can become intertwined, and we can explain the implications of this in relation to debt responsibility. So the service itself is free, completely confidential, and for any business with an Australian business number and less than 100 employees who are experiencing financial difficulties. We do have some limitations. We cannot offer legal advice. We cannot offer corporate insolvency advice, investment advice, complex business advice, or interpersonal disputes between business parties. So there's some limitations there, but we're able to offer a great range of services to the small business community.
Fantastic. Success stories you've had with some of your clientele?
Sure. So there's really so many. I do really understand that financial stress can be completely overwhelming, and it can affect how people relate to family, to work, and can severely impact mental health. I know that in my job, I've most definitely saved lives and helped people take steps that they needed to take and to make decisions that will set them up for a financially secure future. Every time I close a file, I have an immense sense of pride, knowing that while I have provided relevant options to the client, they have really been empowered to make decisions in their life, to take back that control of their lives, which really puts them on a path to a much better future. So lots of success stories, but it's a happy thing for me when I close a file, because I know that they're set up and they're able to make really great decisions going forward, and potentially I've changed some lives. So it's really rewarding.
Yeah. Well, for that, Lani, I'll just have to give you a bit of a...
Thank you very much.
This is usually the time of the show where I open up for if there's any audience. I can't see anyone there tonight, unfortunately. But is there anything you'd like to ask me? Well, we're...
Yeah, sure.
Live media.
Yeah, it's fun. What's your sort of role in the community? And obviously you're working with Startup Manager, Huddle Manager at the moment, but what sort of role do you take in the community, and what are you sort of seeing out there in terms of small business, if you're seeing or noticing any trends or anything like that?
Well, my role is, well, I produce podcasts, and my role is just, this is my volunteer. This is giving back to the community, because I do sponsor Startup Huddle, and I do essentially trying to be there for entertainment. I always like to see myself as providing morale to the troops because we all need to escape now and again, and nothing's more intimate than a podcast. So that's where I see my role in performing.
Awesome.
Hmm.
That must be really rewarding for you.
Oh yeah, and well, I love what I do. It doesn't really feel like work. And I've turned this hobby into a business, which is just the last 12 months has just really accelerated my passion.
That's great. And I think that's really important in small business. You have to be prepared to pivot. You can't sort of be stagnant, and
Yeah.
people are out there really making changes to their businesses that are not maybe where they thought they were going to go, but they're able to really pivot and make the most of opportunities. So that's really awesome.
Oh, well, I had a huge pivot because prior to the pandemic, I was a freelance social media manager, but now I've added podcast producer slash journalist to my job title, so it's really good. Yeah.
That's great.
Finally, Lani, I know it seems to be a bit short and sweet, but where else can we find you?
So to make an appointment, we have 2 offices, Mandurah and Byford. So anyone that needs any kind of help, or if they're struggling with finances at all, whether it be small business or in a personal setting, they can call our office and make an appointment. Our amazing reception staff are always there to answer the call. The number is 9581 1281. And they can make a face-to-face, or if you prefer, they can make a phone appointment for you as well.
Yeah. Awesome stuff. I'll make sure those in the show notes. Lani, thank you very much for coming on to the show tonight.
Thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
No worries. And for everyone else who's listening out there, just a reminder, it is census night, and putting your details in your stats will allocate resources to people like Finnicare and anything like that. So it's very important. Make sure you're registered and be counted. So just a little reminder to the community.
Excellent reminder.
No worries.